Hello, bonjour. Welcome to the Union Safety Net, le filet de sécurité syndicale, a union podcast for working people. I'm your host, Sébastien Bezeau, et oui, parfois en français aussi. This podcast is hosted by the Union of Safety and Justice Employees, le Syndicat des employés de la sécurité et de la justice. Join us for an informative discussion every month about issues currently affecting working people. 'Tis the holiday season when the importance of retail and service workers becomes very clear. Shopping and dining out becomes constant social obligations during the month of December. But whether you prefer to deck the halls or hibernate, one thing is certain. Retail and service jobs become pressure cookers during the holiday season. Despite online shopping changing the retail landscape, in-person shopping experiences still reign supreme. There's something magical about getting a fancy cup of coffee or hot chocolate and browsing a gift store or holiday market. And loads of Canadians do just that. During the holidays, business in coffee shops increases, and so does the workload for baristas. Across Canada, they prepare made-to-order beverages all day, every day, all crafted to meet the customer's needs. It's a deceptively difficult job. This past November, several Starbucks locations in Ontario unionized with the United Steelworkers. Today, we're chatting with Jaymi Goodrich, a Starbucks employee who has been involved in this organizing drive. We'll be discussing the misconceptions about what some consider seasonal jobs and why unionizing makes sense. Jaymi, welcome to the Union Safety Net.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Jaymi, how long have you worked for Starbucks? Tell our listeners a bit about yourself.
I've been working at Starbucks for 7 years in January. I've been at the same store also for 7 years, which is kind of unusual. Lots of partners, we call Starbucks employees partners. They eventually transfer, but I've stayed put this whole time. So yeah, I've seen a lot of changes over the years.
I bet 7 years. And I mean, okay, random question. Why do they call it a store and not a restaurant? I would think it's a coffee shop. It's a restaurant, right?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I don't know.
We'll have to ask the corporate head office of Starbucks. But we'll talk to you as a barista. Individuals working as baristas in coffee shops like Starbucks aren't necessarily seen to be long-term employees of these establishments. Yourself, you've been there for 7 years, which is, I guess, extraordinary in a sense and not what we usually expect or anticipate. So tell us about these workers and how does unionizing fit in the picture?
So a lot of us are younger people. A lot of us are students, graduated as well. A lot of people are disabled, queer, just like a ton of different identities and backgrounds. I find that a number of years ago, maybe 5+ years ago before the pandemic, people did tend to stay a lot longer at Starbucks than what they do now. I kind of feel like Starbucks kind of capitalizes a little bit on it being a revolving door of people, whatever reason they might say that could be. I have my suspicions. I think it's because people start at a lower wage and the ones who stay longer, their wage kind of compounds over the years. Yeah, unionizing I fits in because there are people who want to stay as long as I have, but sometimes the conditions are just so rough or toxic that it's hard for people to stay. So they find somewhere else to move on to. And again, oftentimes some people will finish their schooling and then they'll naturally move on to whatever field that they studied in. But a lot of it is people who really want to stay, but they just feel like they can't.
Interesting. So it's quite a diverse workplace from what you're saying. Now, we know, I mean, every time I go to a coffee shop, I always look at the hot coffee pots and the hot water coming. And I always, as a union person, you always think of health and safety hazards, right? You're trained that way. So we know that health and safety on the job, it's been a major concern at the Starbucks where you have organized employees among many others. Can you tell us more about the nature of the injuries that are likely to occur on the job if you're working at a Starbucks coffee shop?
Yes. The most common injuries I would say are burns, slips and falls, and also like falling objects with the back of house and all the things that are kind of like stacked up. I would say though, more than that would be the like psychological harm, oftentimes from the customers.
I worked retail a few years. I think most people who go to university or post-secondary at some point have to work in the service or retail industry. And I'm glad that you mentioned that the physical, the mental trauma that people face when they work in the service or retail industry. So I guess you would say, although you get the burns and then the slips and falls, that's a major one in your opinion?
Yes, that is. Yeah. Especially with just like the ovens too, we're sequencing and moving so fast and we're using tongs, and it's just kind of like, especially if somebody were to work in a drive-through store. I work in a cafe store, so like we don't have the drive-through, but it's just go, go, go all the time. We're told to be mindful. Don't burn yourself. Even the language they use is like putting the accountability like onto you, when it's like, well, maybe the leadership should kind of like consider how they're playing a role in this, where it's like you're pushing people to get these times or to keep wait times down. The app now has a 5-minute cap on it. The app, when you do like mobile orders, in 5 minutes, if it's not done, that customer will get a notification that it's done, despite if it is or isn't. And so, yeah, it's just like constant pressure for a higher volume of production. And of course, inevitably, people are going to slip or burn themselves.
From what you've seen and experienced, what is it like for average employees working at Starbucks? Like, how long are the shifts typically, and how flexible are the hours? Like, how is it in general?
Nowadays, the average shift for baristas is around like 4.5 hours. Flexibility, like Starbucks does offer sort of like the benefit of having flexible scheduling. However, it kind of falls back to like who the leadership team is in that store. So you can submit your availability, but if for some reason or another, you have a boundary that you enact with work where maybe you don't want to come in outside of your availability, or maybe you don't want to pick up a shift, or maybe sometimes even if you call in, like sometimes your hours can be reduced. You can be like blacklisted, so to speak. Starbucks doesn't necessarily offer full-time and part-time, like quote unquote, anymore. It's just sort of like everybody is considered part-time, and you could ideally like pick up more shifts from other stores to supplement your hours. Because yeah, the average is just about like 4 hours. Sometimes you'll get an 8-hour shift here and there. If you're like a key holder supervisor, you'll probably see more like 8-hour shifts. But this was also why it was really important for us in our contracts to secure borrowing, because so many people have to pick up shifts in order to supplement their own hours in their schedule. And we got that. And after the company was telling us for the entire time of bargaining, and when we were petitioning like to unionize, they just kept telling us, you're not going to borrow anymore. You're not going to get the hours, as a way to starve us out. But we won. So we get the bar just like everybody else.
Borrowing. What's the concept of borrowing hours? It means nothing to me, but it's obviously extremely important for baristas.
Yeah. So borrowing is when a Starbucks employee or a partner are able to go to other stores to supplement their hours. So you have your like weekly schedule that's put out, and then you're able to, it's called shift marketplace, where people put up their shifts that they can't work or don't want to work. And you can nab that at a different store. You can drive there and work it.
Is it just within the unionized Starbucks, or is it like across any Starbucks coffee shop?
It's with every shop, just like everybody else, which is like the big win. But it's all in North America. So even if you went to like somewhere in the United States, let's just say you're visiting family or something for a few months, you can be assigned to a store over there, and you're able to pick up shifts there and be paid for them. And I've known partners who have moved to the UK and they've gone for school, and everything just transferred over there. It was just the same for them. They still Starbucks employee. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. And that's why you stuck out for it, right? It was worth fighting for. You mentioned a few things I want to go over. This was a question of mine, but I think you've already clarified it. So every store basically is treated differently. It really depends on the leadership in terms of like workplace conditions and whatnot. But then you also mentioned, everyone's kind of treated as part-time employees. And we know that Starbucks has widely promoted employee benefit perks like health plans, even though they're quite limited. So has unionizing significantly improved the provisions within the benefit plan? But was the benefit plan enhanced after you unionized?
Our benefit plan is actually, it's not too bad. We have stock options, which is called bean stock, where every year, whether you want to pay into it or not, you have the option to, but the company will like vest stocks for you. We also have an RSP plan, and we have, like dental, vision, and mental health. So it's not too bad.
But since you unionize, has it improved significantly, or did that just remain status quo for now?
I would say it remains status quo. Like we enshrined it in the contract because the company has gotten a new CEO, and with that, some things can potentially be drawn back.
But at least you have the contract protection. It's in the contract.
Yes.
That's a major win. It's in there. So congratulations on that. What other improvements were you able to secure with your collective agreement? I mean, we talked about benefits being enshrined in the contract, borrowing, which sound as if it was your top ask. Anything else?
Yeah, having an accountability process for rounding back to talking about like the customer abuse. Starbucks does have a third place policy, but honestly, it's kind of rarely enforced. Oftentimes you'll hear from the leadership just saying like, oh, let them just get them in and get them out, kind of saying, maybe you can write an incident report, but they don't really do very much in my experience. So having that enshrined in our contract, we deal with, where my location is, we deal with a lot of sort of like the houseless population and people who like face mental health challenges and like addiction. And like I've actually physically been attacked by people. Yeah. So that kind of just keeps coming to my mind. And it took this one incident. I had a customer who was so verbally abusive and sexist. And for years, he was just allowed to keep coming and going. I was following the proper channels and making the incident reports, following up with my leadership. One day I just kind of like had it and I confronted one of them about it. And then I got in trouble because my approach was aggressive.
The irony of it all.
Yeah, yeah. So now in our contract, we have this accountability process where we can reference to our leadership and there will be consequences for them if they don't follow through with it. And that was a huge win. But yeah, a lot of it is making the company accountable to what they say, the flexible hours, the borrowing, the benefits, like the mental health aspect. There's a lot of chatter and talk, about supporting mental health. But then the moment in some instances with some managers, you're having a bad day. It's like, you're not connecting with customers. Our customer connection score, which are determined by these surveys that are emailed out to people on a weekly basis, it's going to go down. You're not smiling enough. You're not greeting people enough. And it's like, I thought I was being supportive.
Right. Yeah. Well, your union is supporting you, that's for sure. And it's a proof with the collective agreement that you were able to achieve. Now that you and your coworkers are part of the greater labor movement in your province and the country, how were you able to build relationships with the wider labor movement in Canada? Are you in touch with other unions and baristas across other, countries or provinces? How did that open any doors?
Yeah, it has actually. We have with our unionized stores right now in Ontario, I'm in contact with all of them. So we just kind of, we chat, we keep in touch and sort of ask each other questions about the process. Cause, the other stores in Ontario right now, they're going through their bargaining process and we've already won ours, like our contract. So, it's just a lot of questions like that. I'm still pretty new to this. So I think you're actually probably the first other union really that I've kind of chatted with. But, yeah, it's just There are a lot of opportunities, and it's especially with like education and programs with the union, and it's really great because like I find that like young people, like we really want to be involved. Yeah, it's just about kind of like saying yes to when it comes up. And it's exciting.
So can you give us an update? You said that some of the other stores are currently in bargaining. So can you give us a quick overview of the effort to unionize more Starbucks employees in Canada?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right now it's kind of doing more stuff like this, really, just like sort of public speaking sort of opportunities to get the word out there that like Starbucks will tell you you will lose borrowing, you won't get hours anymore, people can't cover your shifts. They're going to tell you that if like benefits can be taken away, and it's not true. And I know that everybody in the back of their mind, they know that it's not true, but they're so afraid because they're just so afraid to like challenge the status quo. And Starbucks has really been successful with like their anti-union, like their union busting campaigns. They've gone so far as to just like in our store personally and other ones that I've known, they will do like one-on-one interviews with you to kind of just like, tell you that we're here to support you. We're here to make changes. But they're scared. They're scared. We honestly, like when we come together like this, like we really do have all the power, because I found when I started talking to the managers, when they were coming to me one-on-one, what are the problems in the store? What are some things you can fix? And I would tell them, suddenly they started becoming fixed. And I was like, interesting that I was complaining about this for years. And now, okay, it's because they're scared. So I just getting the word out there. Like we won borrowing, we won bargaining, like you guys can do it too. And to please do it. So this is a great opportunity. And then also, my union just like gets me, like I do a lot of speaking with other stores they have like their key insiders who reach out to USW and then they deploy me to talk to them. We're also kind of like, we're in the works of doing maybe like targeted ad campaigns as well to get the word out there. Basically any opportunity I get to like talk about this, I'm just like, because I remember when it was just me and my store, and we were the first one in Ontario to even start talking about this and organizing, and how nerve-wracking it was. And we really were missing that like piece of, relating to somebody who was in the same boat. At first, we talked to Starbucks Workers United in the States because they had a lot of press coverage at the time, and they still do. So we just thought like, we'll contact them. Like it seems like a good option. So just talking to them, they were supportive. And then eventually United Steelworkers had jurisdiction in Canada, but I didn't know at the time. So they just handed us over to them, and then we just got it done.
So in the States, they were unionized with the Steelworkers?
In the States, they're unionized with somebody called Starbucks Workers United. And I think the broader union is like Workers United.
Okay. Right. I wish you could have seen yourself in the last minute where you just light up. When you talk about organizing and how the workers have power, you just light up and you could tell it's in you. So has anyone in your family ever been unionized before, or?
Oh yeah, many people in my family are like, I come from a blue collar family. So like, the concept of unionizing, like it's not scary. It's like, it's very normal, but Starbucks is just so afraid that because what happens is that it just affects their bottom dollar. And you know what I mean? So it's like, oh no, you have to treat us fairly and pay us accordingly. Shocking.
I know, right? What a crazy concept.
Yeah.
Do you know, are you aware if there's any other unionized Starbucks? In the States, but do you know if there's like some in Europe, or is this something like an international solidarity happening? Do you know?
As far as Europe, I'm actually not entirely sure, unless they have more Starbucks terminology incoming, unless they have licensed stores. So there are two different types of stores, licensed and corporate. The licensed ones are where there's a franchise owner. So those are your Starbucks that you see at like en routes on the 401 or in a hospital or a hotel, stuff like that, or even in airports. So there might be unionized Starbucks like that in Europe, but as far as corporate stores, I don't think so. And then in Canada as well, there's, of course, in Alberta and BC, there are a few stores unionized with USW.
Now, since you unionized your workplace, have you seen more people wanting to work there compared to other Starbucks who are not unionized?
Yes.
I wonder why.
I know. Yeah, me too.
Interesting. Last question. Why did you choose the United Steelworkers to unionize? I mean, steel doesn't rhyme with coffee. And I mean, we do have like other unions like the United Food and Commercial Worker where they have food in the acronym. So I'm just curious why. I mean, the Steelworkers are an amazing union. They're international. They're very well established. So I just wonder what attracted you to contact them.
Well, at first, it's kind of funny. Like, we contacted Starbucks Workers United because we were we didn't really know where to start, and figured that like it kind of was a little bit of a barrier at first because we were like, who do we contact? And we were like, we'll just contact SBW. Like they'll tell us what to do, where to go, if anything. And they did. And then they deferred us to USW. They had jurisdiction here in Canada. And I'm so like grateful and appreciative to have them as our union.
Oh yeah, the Steelworkers is a fantastic union. It's just people won't normally associate the Steelworkers with Starbucks coffee baristas. So that's why I'm hoping we can spread the word and assist with the future organizing drive. Jaymi, that's all the questions we had for you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Union Safety Net. Again, congratulations on the achievements you were able to secure for yourself and your coworkers. We wish you the best of luck with the unionization drive at the other Starbucks. If there's any baristas out there who want to unionize, what should they do? What's your last word of advice?
So I will say, for anybody out there who's looking to unionize, just do it. Just take the step. You can go online at usw.ca, especially if you're in Eastern Canada. You can look up District 6. That's the jurisdiction you fall under, and they have people that you can contact there. And the website's being revamped right now to make it a little more accessible. But please do it. You have everything to gain, and honestly, nothing to lose. And just remember that, like, Starbucks, like, they're afraid of us. They're afraid of our voice. They're afraid of what we can achieve together. And it's only been a positive experience for me. Only positive. It's been amazing. And having these opportunities is just it's so fun. I love it.
That's amazing. Again, Jaymi, thank you for joining us on the Union Safety Net, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Merci. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Union Safety Net, le filet de sécurité syndicale, a union podcast created by USJE for working people. If you have any feedback on today's episode or would like to suggest a topic you want us to cover, please reach out on social media platforms. We love to hear from our listeners. I'm your host, Sébastien Bezeau, and I hope you'll join us next month for another episode of the Union Safety Net, le filet de sécurité syndicale.